friend. I am so excited that you are here for session 3 of Towers. Every week in this series, through our videos and our daily devotionals, we are seeking to discover what it truly means to live with humility. Now, why? Why do we need to humble ourselves? Well, because it restores the proper relationship that we're to have with the one who created us and who sustains us. He is God and we are not. And the more that we understand our rightful place in this world and his rightful place in this world, the more we will draw close to him, the more we will be compelled to love others around us well, and the more peace and joy we are going to have in the life that he has given to each of us. Now, last week, we studied how humility is, do you remember? Confidence, but not confidence in ourselves, right? Humility is confidence in him. And ironically, when we put our confidence in what the Lord is able to do through us, it actually makes us stronger, more courageous, more assured people. Now today, we are studying a bit of history from the Gospel of Luke. So if you like to turn in your Bible, I encourage you to turn to Luke 17 and let's go. Now Luke 17 is fairly late in the public ministry of Jesus. Up to this point, he has been teaching and healing and traveling, calling many disciples for quite a while. And word has spread about this miracle worker. Jesus has gone viral as much as you can in the first century without the internet. We should never underestimate the power of word of mouth, because wherever Jesus is, people are talking about him and they're finding him. They are seeking him out, most especially for healing. So here we go, Luke 17, let's start at verse 11. Now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. Now this is an important fact. I actually have a map for you. You will see that Galilee is to the north, then you have Samaria, and then under Samaria you have Judea. Judea is where Jerusalem is, and that is where Jesus is headed in this passage. So he is walking along the border of these two regions. Now, interesting to note, very few Jewish people would intentionally walk through Samaria, or particularly close to the border of it. And there's a long history of why. In a nutshell, roughly 700 years before the day we're at in Luke 17, a nation called Assyria came in and invaded the northern kingdom of Israel. They deported thousands of Jews back to Assyria, but there were also many Assyrians who came to Samaria and settled there. Well, over time, there were Assyrians who fell in love with Jews and Jews who fell in love with Assyrians, and they got married and they had babies, okay? But these babies were technically biracial. They were half Jewish and they were half Gentile, meaning non-Jews. Now, over time, very deep prejudices towards these people in Samaria grew. This racism most especially existed in the minds of many Jews, and they would even refer to Samaritans by the derogatory nickname half-breeds. So by Jesus' day in the first century, Jews had grown accustomed to steering clear of Samaria by going around it. Like they would actually take several extra days in their travel to travel from Galilee to Judea and back and forth just to miss Samaria. But not Jesus. Now you might say, well, he isn't going into Samaria. Oh, he does. He does very early on in his ministry in John chapter 4. We see, to probably the surprise of his prejudiced disciples, we see him travel through Samaria. And in fact, we even see him stay there for a short bit because there's a woman at a well that he knows he needs to see. So why here is he just walking along the border? Like, why is he not just going through it? It would be quicker. Well, because I'd say it's because he knows there's a group of 10 men who are seeking him out. And these 10 men are not allowed to live in either city. Let's see why. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." In the first century, there were lots of restrictions when it came to a person who had leprosy, a very serious and debilitating skin disease. It still is, in fact. Over 200,000 people in the world are diagnosed every year with leprosy. There are still leper colonies in places like India, Africa, South America. If you were a leper in the first century, you were to stay 6 feet away from any non-leprous person. If the wind was blowing, you were to stay 150 feet away from anyone. On top of that, you would have to walk around covering your mouth as best you could and crying out, "Unclean, unclean." As you can imagine, that isn't just humbling, that is humiliating. Not to mention, you couldn't live with your family. You couldn't even live in the city anymore. You were banned. You had to live on the outskirts in camps with other lepers. But these 10 men, they've heard about this man, Jesus. He heals. He restores people, lepers. He heals them. And it just so happens that on this day in Luke 17, he is walking through the outskirts of 2 cities. Wouldn't you know? And just as he is arriving at a village, these 10 men approach him, socially distancing themselves out of respect, as they are required to do, but they are yelling at him, "Please, Master, have pity. Have mercy, have compassion on us." This word means all of those things. And then it says in verse 14, when Jesus saw them, he said, "Go, show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were cleansed. There you go. Simple as that. Now, what Jesus is instructing them to do actually aligns, of course, with what his Father, the Lord God, said to do all the way back in Leviticus chapter 14. If you've never read Leviticus chapter 14, let me tell you, it is a page turner. It is all about what to do if you are healed of a skin condition like leprosy. And what are you to do? You are to go and show yourself to the priest so that he can announce your cleanliness and he can help restore you back to your community. So here Jesus tells them, go, show yourselves to the priests. But notice they're not healed immediately. So their obedience in this moment is actually this huge demonstration of their faith. Jesus is calling them to walk into a city where they're not allowed to be, to find a priest who they're not allowed to be close to while still having leprosy in some way. This would have taken a lot of courage for all of them. So this is a beautiful picture of trust. They are trusting that Jesus is for real. He's legit. He's telling them to do something and he's going to come through for them. Now, no doubt though, those first few steps into the city were probably quite intimidating. Like, are we doing this, guys? Like, what are we doing here? But I can only imagine their joy. Can you picture that as they are walking and they're looking down and they're realizing that these sores, these scars, their pain is fading away. Verse 15. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Now, none of them had to come back. Like, Jesus didn't tell them to come back. Praising God at the feet of Jesus was not a requirement here to be healed. So why did this Samaritan man return? Because he could not say, thank you to the one who gave him that healing. So we see him visibly humble himself. Like his whole body language, right? It says he threw himself at the feet of Jesus. Like he fell down. He was like laid out, right? He lowered himself as close to the ground as he could get at these dust-covered feet of Jesus, and he thanked him. Now, the closest translation of this word of thanking isn't just what you and I would think about as far as thankfulness. It's actually a far deeper word than that. It literally means to be thankful for God's grace. Grace. Receiving a gift that you did nothing to earn or deserve. Now, Jesus was full of grace. He was gracious to him. He was gracious to all 10 of those men. And in turn, this man overflowed with gratefulness. We see Jesus say to the man, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner? Except this Samaritan?" Now, we don't know what the other lepers did once they were healed. We can assume that that priest helped restore them to their community, to their families. They celebrated for sure, but here's the thing, being happy about your circumstances isn't the same as being grateful. We can be happy, we can be joyous, we can celebrate the great things that are happening in our lives without necessarily showing gratitude to the one who gave us the things. Gratefulness requires a subject. It requires us to be pointing to someone or something. So Jesus goes on to say, "Rise and go. Your faith has made you well." We see this man humbling himself on the ground before Jesus, and we see Jesus literally raise him up and commend him for his faith and send him into that city fully healed. Now, Jesus' final words are not intended to mean that this guy somehow got more healing than the others. We have to be careful there because he and his friends all had the faith to obey and to walk to the priests. Like whether any of them humbled themselves at the feet of Jesus gratefully, Jesus healed them. It was an act of grace. They did nothing to earn it. That was the point. They believed that Jesus could heal them, so that caused them to obey him, and their faith made them well. They were healed. They were all healed. The humility in this scene is found in the gratefulness of this one man coming back, bowing down, and saying, "You didn't have to, Jesus. There was no reason for you to do it. Like I'm a Samaritan. I'm the lowest of the low, and you're just gracious, and I'm so grateful. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you." You know, the Lord to this day is constantly creating and healing and restoring and saving and providing comfort and strength. Like every day, he's doing those things. Why? Does he have to? No, it's just grace. Like from the very beginning of his word, we see that he is the God who provides. He gives, he helps, he forgives, not because of anything that we've done. It's just who he is. I want you to think about your own life. When I think about mine, anything good in my life, my abilities, my family, my friends, my job, my home, my things, all of it, everything that I have, anything good that I have, if any of us were to trace those things, okay, back far enough, we couldn't help but realize that he is the source of all of it. Every promotion, every paycheck, every comfort, every bit of strength that we have to make it through the day, every healing, every bit of our lives, if we traced it back, we could not help but go, well, it was from him. It's all from him. If I'm not grateful, the truth is, God is not necessarily going to stop giving me those things. I mean, think about it. Indeed, he gives a lot of good things to a lot of people who don't acknowledge him at all. That's his grace. But if we want to grow in our humility, in our right relationship with him, then we've got to start practicing gratefulness more and more. To humble ourselves before him in gratitude. It's about saying to him, I did nothing to deserve what I have. I didn't earn it. You didn't have to give it to me. Like, my life could have gone very differently. The way I was born, who I am, it could have gone so differently, and it didn't. And you're healing me. You have saved me. You are sustaining me. You're surrounding me with a community of people. Like, you're giving me the strength every day when I just don't know if I can do it today. Like, you are doing all of that, Lord. It's you. And I'm so grateful to you. Humility is gratefulness. This is what we're pondering this week. In every daily devotional, we're jumping into a variety of scriptures. And the question is, do I live in gratefulness towards you, Lord? Do I truly thank you for what I have? I'm not just happy about it. I'm not just celebrating when things go well, but like, do I truly recognize that you're the source of all of the gifts? It's nothing that I earned, really. It's just because you are the God of grace. When we live in gratefulness towards God, we are compelled to bow down before him. We are compelled to throw ourselves at his feet. That's just what happens. I encourage you this week, make sure you spend a few moments every day in the Word, because it strengthens you more than you know every day. Share this study with a friend or your small group. In the midst of all of the hard stuff, may we seek to be grateful this week for what is right before us, for the things that he's doing, because he is a gracious, good God. And I will see you next week for session 4 of Towers. Bye.